Hi, I'm Tim Marema, editor of the Daily Yonder at dailyyonder.com, and welcome to another edition of Check on Your Neighbor. This is a project of the National Rural Assembly, which is asking folks to call or email with neighbors and friends to see how we're all getting along during the pandemic. And today I'm checking in with a new friend, the Reverend Sara Jane Nixon, in New Dublin Presbyterian Church in Dublin, Virginia, which is about 20 miles southwest of Blacksburg. Churches are very important in rural areas, and so I wanted to see how Sara Jane was getting along and what steps her congregation was taking to stay connected and comforted during the pandemic. I met Sara Jane through our mutual friend Steve Willis, who wrote the column Simple Gifts for the Daily Yonder. So let's check in with Sara Jane. What's been happening in terms of the cases that you've had in your area?
Our number of cases are really low because we are so far out, I think. We have people who have family members who live in New York or in more populous places who have been affected by it, and so it's kind of indirect in that way. But I don't think our congregation has been impacted directly by the pandemic.
Have people talked about just being frustrated that things don't appear to be a problem there, so why worry about the restrictions? Or are people talking about how kind of how epidemics work, and if we don't all participate, the effectiveness of the measures don't work as well?
We run the gamut, I think. We've got some people who feel like, that it's not a big deal. We have some people who feel like it's a very big deal. I would say on the whole, even the people who think maybe we're overreacting are willing to participate anyway. I know people who think that maybe it's not necessary to wear masks in the grocery store I know people who still wear them anyway, because they know other people.
So churches are, in many ways, my experience is they're one of the fundamental institutions of rural areas. Schools and churches are kind of bedrock. Obviously there must have been a lot of changes that occurred. So how did your congregation and you respond to the need to not be worshiping and connecting the way you usually do?
People have just done an amazing job of figuring out, here are a bunch of things we can't do. We can't gather. We can't do the things we normally think of as church. But honestly, people have done just a fantastic job of staying in contact with each other, of calling each other. We switched, to online things. People have been really flexible, including people who before this were not a fan of the internet in general. For some, there are people in my congregation who literally can't get internet. It's just not available where they live. And that's a real challenge. There are other people for whom, they have internet, but it's bad internet. So we've responded to that by trying to keep what we do as undemanding on the broadband as possible. So we don't record a whole service. I will record a sermon, and then the rest of the service is kind of based on an order of daily prayer that's meant for the people in a household to do together. So I'm not recording prayers. I'm not recording hymns. We're not doing any of that. It's much more low tech, primarily so that people with terrible internet can still access it as much as possible.
What are people saying about that experience?
People understand that it's crazy right now and it's not going to be perfect. And in my experience, people are extending a great deal of grace for things not being normal.
And how about the life of the church outside of corporate worship? I'm missing potlucks right now. I don't know about you, but the other activities. And also, the churches exist to help people in their community too. So that I'm sure all of that has adapted or changed or stopped? I mean, what's the stuff outside of worship? How's that going?
Our churches in our area have several times kind of come together, joined together to do fewer things, but be able to do them sustainably in the midst of this crisis. So things like Bible study, which have a fellowship element as well, we're doing with another church. So I think Ecumenism, doing, not sticking within your own tribe, has reaching out to, the Presbyterians, playing with the Methodists and things, has become, we're finding new ways to do that so that our outreach can continue even in more limited ways.
I mean, has your session talked about sort of under what guidelines or criteria you would start to gather again?
Our elders make that decision, so it's not my call when we reopen, but I think we're just waiting until it feels like a responsible thing to do. And the other aspect of our church especially, we have a small sanctuary. We can't effectively social distance in a sanctuary the size of our sanctuary. So we're also talking about meeting outside. We're not really sure what it's going to look like, and we're not really sure when it's going to be. But we do want to prioritize, loving our neighbor, taking care of our community, not gather. We miss gathering desperately, and everybody I talk to just misses each other and misses public worship.
Is there do you have a sense that there's a broader spectrum of, is a rural church a place where there's still kind of room for people of different backgrounds and persuasions to get along and do things together?
Absolutely. And that is extremely true of the church I serve. It is, we have, you name the political commitments, we have it. Some of these, some of our people could not be more different from each other. But they get along and they love each other, and you kind of have to, right? You, like you say, you can't take your family.
Personally, being a minister is always a difficult personal experience for different reasons, but I would think that this might be a especially challenging time because of all the changes that occur and the expectations that are so different. I mean, how are you feeling about how things are going?
I'm just human, so it varies by the day for sure. But I'm not by myself. I'm in a community, a wonderful community of wonderful people who make sure that I remember that I'm not by myself, and that helps a lot. I trust that this is not pleasant, and it might not be the only. We might have to do this again, even if it loosens up. It might tighten back down. This might not be the last time we're in this situation. But I trust that the Lord is going to get us through this, like He's gotten us through all sorts of unpleasant things in the past. So I'm trying to rest in that peace.